Everyone thought Donald Trump would never crack in public. They believed his legend was too loud, too practiced to break. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did not bring an argument, she brought evidence. And when the mirror finally rose, he could not look away. This is how power learns it can still be humiliated. If you believe the truth deserves witnesses, not just headlines, you belong here with us. Subscribe now, because this is only the first crack in the facade. The chair had barely finished announcing her name when the air in the hearing room turned electric. It was 9:01 in the morning, but the light filtering through the tall windows already felt too bright, too unforgiving. President Trump stood up so quickly his chair skidded backward and crashed into the shin of a young advisor. The man hissed in pain but did not dare to reach down. All eyes were fixed on Trump. He tore the microphone from the lapel of his navy suit. The movement was not practiced or controlled. It was frantic. His fingers, pale and unsteady, closed around the small metal clip like it was the last piece of authority he had left to hold. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then his voice broke the silence, rough and cracked, the sound of a man trying to summon rage to drown out something he could not name. "You will not destroy me with this circus." He was not looking at the rows of representatives, not at the cameras blinking red. He was locked onto Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She did not flinch. She did not look away. She only shifted her weight in the chair, as if the whole spectacle was a weather pattern she had anticipated months in advance. Her pen rested quietly against the folder on her desk. In that folder were the documents no one in the West Wing had thought she could secure. And in that stillness, the audience watching on live feeds around the country could sense something more dangerous than outrage taking shape. Foreboding, undeniable, irreversible, Trump's breathing was uneven. He held the microphone so close to his chest it looked absurd, a gesture half defensive, half panicked. His voice rose again, raw. "You think you can stand there and read your little pages and tear down everything we built?" Ocasio-Cortez tilted her head just slightly. Her reply was not loud. It did not need to be. "You wanted to build something no one could question. That does not mean no one will." A low, nervous shuffle moved through the gallery. The CNN correspondent nearest the aisle leaned forward, lips parted. She could feel it. This was not the scripted conflict they had prepared for in the control rooms. This was the moment power recognized it could no longer pretend. Trump's jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped along his temple. He lifted the microphone again, his hand trembling. "I am the President of the United States. You will not speak to me like that." She studied him for a second. When she answered, her tone was colder than any accusation. "You are standing." "I am sitting. That is the only difference here." The words did not echo because no one dared to make a sound. Not the aides, not the committee members, not the cameras. Every breath was caught in the same suspended moment. In the control room, a producer exhaled so hard his headset shifted. He knew they would replay this clip for the next decade. Trump's eyes darted to the chairman, as if searching for an intervention, a rule to rescue him from this unfolding exposure. The chairman did not lift his gaze from the binder in his hands. It was too late. Everyone had already seen it, seen the desperation that no amount of volume could disguise. Ocasio-Cortez leaned back in her chair, never breaking eye contact. Her hand moved to the folder again. Her thumb tapped the edge once, an unhurried gesture of finality. "You want to stand? Good, because this is only page one." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, or fear. She did not smile, she did not soften. Her voice stayed measured, almost detached. "Either you answer for what is in here, or the record will answer for you, and this record does not end on page one. Because the record is not waiting for your permission." The folder in her hand did not tremble when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lifted it. It moved with the same deliberate calm that had already begun to make the room feel smaller, the walls closer. She did not look at the cameras or the reporters. Her eyes stayed fixed on Trump. When she spoke, her voice did not rise. It only grew clearer. "I am holding a record of emergency budget reallocations dated July 12th. She set the first page on the table so the clerk could see it. A white sheet with a line of black type across the top. Department of the Treasury Disbursement Authorization. Her finger traced the summary figure printed halfway down the page. $14 million moved from the Federal Emergency Response Reserve. Her tone did not waver. Those funds were earmarked for disaster relief, wildfire containment, medical response for hurricane zones. Instead, they were transferred to cover legal expenses related to your personal tax litigation. A stir moved through the rows of representatives behind her. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked directly at Trump, waiting for him to deny it. He gripped the microphone in both hands. His knuckles stood out in sharp ridges, pale against the dark suit. His voice cracked as he forced it out. "Where did you get that?" His gaze jumped from the clerk to the committee counsel and back to Ocasio-Cortez. "Who gave you that?" She did not blink. Her reply was simple. The document came from a whistleblower who worked in the Treasury Department. It has been authenticated by the Oversight Committee's nonpartisan staff. Trump tried to form a rebuttal, but no words came. For a moment, he looked almost startled by the absence of a script. The silence that settled over the hearing room was not empty. It was thick, alive. Ocasio-Cortez let it stretch just long enough that the reporters began to shift in their chairs. Then she lifted the second page. Her thumb held it steady. The document detailed the line-item code that reclassified the funds. It is not complicated. It is not buried under legal jargon. Anyone can read it. $14 million intended to keep families safe was reclassified as legal contingency for your defense. A junior staffer near the door pressed her hand to her mouth. She had read the transcript, but reading was nothing like hearing it spoken. Ocasio-Cortez's voice softened but did not lose its edge. You did not just cut budgets to build a wall. You cut budgets to build a shield around yourself. A slow, collective exhale passed through the gallery. Some of the press began typing, their keyboards clicking in uneven bursts. Trump shifted his weight from one foot to the other, still gripping the microphone as if it might steady him. His jaw clenched. You do not know the context. He sounded less certain than he had an hour earlier. Ocasio-Cortez did not look away. Then tell us the context. Tell us why the most powerful office in this nation needed to take money from emergency relief to protect your tax returns. He swallowed, but no answer came. A hush settled again, not the respectful quiet of protocol, something colder, recognition. She let the quiet hold a beat longer, then set the second page down beside the first. Her hand rested on the table as she spoke. You have called this process a witch hunt. You have insisted the system is rigged against you. She drew a breath, her voice dropping half a tone. But you did not rig this system for the people who trusted you. You rigged it for yourself. Trump opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. Ocasio-Cortez's gaze did not soften. Her voice did not tremble. You took her safety, her shelter, and her dignity so you could pay for your defense. And this committee will decide if that was a crime. R letter 1 EA5T T letter 1 ED1T. Min S letter 1 EBD CH letter 1 EC9 CH letter 1 EC9 NH. Dung NH letter 1 EFNG D stroke I letter 1 EC3. MY letter 1 EBF Umatoi da narrow. White heavy check mark. Therm hook H letter 1 EAD. UQU letter 1 EA3. FOP Li CU letter 1 ED1 I. White heavy check mark. Therm TI letter 1 EBF. NG Noi TH letter 1 E9 Ba producer. White heavy check mark. Therm D letter 1 EA5 UH. I letter 1 EC7 U. S letter 1 E5P. Distroke letter 1 ED5 V letter 1 EADT Li NH letter 1 ECF. White heavy check mark. Rut NG letter 1 EFN cow CH letter 1 ED1T Cho NH letter 1 ECBP D letter 1 E9T cot. M letter 1 ECD I Chi T I letter 1 EBF T cock G I letter 1 EF Ungiron TUY letter 1 EC7 T distroke letter 1 ED1 I. D letter 1 B0 letter 1 EDB I day la chuong 3 CH letter 1 EC9 NH Ungiron Van T letter 1 EBNG cow. CH letter 1 EC9 Therm Dung cock C letter 1 EA3 I letter 1 EBF N. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did not pause to let the heat drain from the last accusation. She did not soften the momentum. She lifted a second folder from the stack in front of her, thinner than the first, but stamped with the same official insignia. The gold crest of the executive office glinted under the overhead lights. Her thumb rested on the tab as she spoke. This record is composed of internal correspondence from White House advisors and campaign staff, dated between May and September of last year. Her voice was neither casual nor theatrical. It was the tone of someone who understood that clarity was the most dangerous weapon in the room. She unfolded the first page with a measured motion, letting the sound of paper interrupt the restless breathing that had filled the chamber. Her eyes moved down the lines of text, confirming every word before she began to read. The subject line reads, and I quote, "We cannot have the First Lady absent from the campaign again." A shiver passed through the rows of staff seated behind the committee dais. The sentence was ordinary in shape, devastating in context. Ocasio-Cortez continued, her words unhurried. The email thread includes logistical planning for multiple appearances in key electoral districts. It notes the concern that her extended absence from Washington was affecting public perception of family unity and stability. She set the page down in front of her and lifted her gaze to the man still gripping the microphone. "Mr. President, for months you have maintained that your marriage is not a matter of public interest, that your family life has no bearing on your capacity to lead." Her voice did not grow sharp. It remained level, almost quiet. "And yet you built entire campaign cycles on the image of your household as proof of your values." Her hand shifted to the second page. "This document is a communication between your deputy communications director and a senior campaign advisor. It outlines strategies for explaining the First Lady's extended residence in Florida while you remained in Washington." She did not look away from him as she read the quoted line. "We have prepared talking points emphasizing the First Lady's commitment to the family while she manages personal health matters. No further details to be released without approval." Trump's head moved in a small, reflexive shake. He looked down, then up again, as if searching for something familiar to grab onto. His voice came out lower, the edges worn. "No one believes those papers. Anyone can write a memo. Anyone can claim it is real." He spoke without lifting his eyes to hers. Ocasio-Cortez waited a beat before she answered. Her reply did not rise above a measured tone. "These records were obtained under subpoena and verified by the Oversight Committee's investigative team. The names on these emails are not anonymous. The signatures are not copies." Her index finger tapped the margin beside the signature block. "If you wish to challenge their authenticity, you may do so under oath. You may do so right now." A muffled sound passed through the press gallery. The reporters were no longer typing. They were watching, waiting. A producer in the CNN booth leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the moment in his chest. He whispered, not realizing his mic was live. "He's cornered. He has nowhere left to go." Trump exhaled, the motion ragged. His thumb slipped from the clip, and for the first time that morning, he let the microphone rest on the table. He tried to form a rebuttal, but swallowed it instead. Ocasio-Cortez did not look triumphant. There was no flicker of victory in her expression. Only the calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment too many times to be surprised it had come. "You have every right to refute these records," she said, "but you have less right to pretend they do not exist." Her fingers rested flat on the table, the folders aligned beneath her palm. "Your administration has insisted that all questions about your marriage are distractions, that any scrutiny is an invasion of privacy." Her tone dropped lower, colder. "And yet you have used that same marriage as a campaign emblem, as evidence that you alone understand the American family." Her eyes did not waver. "Mr. President, I am not interested in gossip. I am interested in the truth you have packaged as a brand and sold to voters as proof of your moral authority." Trump drew a slow breath as if gathering the strength to interrupt. But he did not speak. He did not look up, his gaze fixed on a place near the center of the table, somewhere between the papers and his own hands. Ocasio-Cortez waited, giving him space to answer, to deny, to summon any defense he still believed he could offer. When the silence held, she leaned back by a single inch. Her voice was quieter than it had been all morning. "Will you swear under penalty of perjury that these records are false?" His lips parted, but no sound emerged. The muscle in his jaw flexed once, twice, before going still. He did not deny. He stared at the table. Nothing moved. Slowly, deliberately, she folded her hands on top of the file. Her voice stayed low, final. "Then the record becomes the truth." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did not give the room time to recover from the last silence. She reached for the third folder without shifting in her seat, her movement as unhurried as it was inevitable. The seal on this one was different. A raised emblem pressed into the corner, colored deep crimson against the cream paper. Even from a distance, the lettering was unmistakable. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. She lifted it with both hands so the cameras could see. A line of murmurs broke out among the staffers clustered behind the committee dais. One of them leaned forward, her pen frozen above her notepad. Ocasio-Cortez waited for the sound to fade. Then she spoke in a voice that was steady, measured, almost quiet. This document is a direct fax from Walter Reed Medical Center. It bears the official seal and the verification stamp required for all external disclosures. She held it up another inch, turning it so the signature block faced the gallery. It is dated 6 months ago. She paused, then began to read, her gaze never leaving the page. The patient exhibits a medical condition requiring continuous monitoring and assistance. Such condition is assessed to materially impact the capacity to discharge executive functions without periodic intervention. Her thumb pressed the edge of the paper, the motion so controlled it seemed rehearsed. That sentence repeated itself in the minds of everyone watching. Materially impact the capacity to discharge executive functions. The words did not echo because no one dared to move. Trump's head lifted, his eyes locking on the document as though he could will it to vanish. When he spoke, his voice was lower, ragged. "You are destroying the office with this. You are telling the world that the president is too weak to serve because of some doctor's note." Ocasio-Cortez did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the paper as she answered. "I am telling the world what your staff has tried to bury." Her tone was not harsh. It was worse. It was factual. "Your chief of staff instructed the medical team to limit access to this record." She turned the page so the second sheet faced her. "The document here is the memo from your chief of staff. It reads, 'Any disclosure of the above information without direct approval will be considered a termination offense.'" Her fingers tapped the lower margin once. "That is not national security. That is personal fear masquerading as privilege." Trump's hand flattened on the table. He drew a long, shaky breath and tried to summon the rhythm of defiance that had carried him through so many scandals. His next words came out raw but louder. "You are tearing down the faith this country has in its leader because you want headlines, because you want to be famous." He lifted the microphone, his grip so tight his knuckles turned white. "You want to pretend you care about the truth. But you care about spectacle." He leaned closer to the microphone as though to reclaim the moment. "This is a spectacle." His voice rose with the word, filling the corners of the room. Ocasio-Cortez let the accusation hang. Her expression did not shift. When she spoke, it was with the same quiet evenness that had begun to make the walls feel smaller. "This is not faith. This is not trust. This is the pity you convinced yourself you could trade for silence." A sharp inhale came from somewhere in the press section. She lowered the folder to the table, the red seal visible to every camera in the gallery. Then she lifted her gaze to meet his eyes. "The record is not ambiguous. The diagnosis is not hypothetical, and the concealment was not accidental." Her words were soft but so clear that no one had to strain to hear them. "This document was disclosed under the Whistleblower Protection Act. It was reviewed and confirmed by legal counsel before I brought it here." Trump's shoulders heaved once as he exhaled. The flush on his face had deepened to a mottled red. He opened his mouth to reply, but no words formed. The microphone trembled in his grasp. Ocasio-Cortez did not fill the silence. She did not offer further explanation. She simply watched him, her hands resting on the folder like an anchor holding her steady. In that moment, the hearing room became as still as a closed chamber. Every spectator felt the shift, the moment when protest lost its shape and left only exposure. No one moved, no one coughed, no one dared to look away. The air seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time in the morning, not even the cameras dared to blink. The silence that followed the disclosure of the medical record was not the silence of exhaustion. It was the silence that comes when the last defense has been stripped away, and nothing remains between a man and the evidence he tried to bury. Trump's breathing had become shallow, each exhale catching in his throat. His eyes flicked from the folder to the faces of the committee, searching for an ally or a reprieve. None came. Ocasio-Cortez did not lower her gaze. She did not avert her eyes to spare him. She kept them fixed on him, a stillness that felt less like accusation and more like inevitability. Her voice did not rise when she spoke again. You have called this process a witch hunt. You have called every question an attack. She paused, letting the words settle into the hush. But a mirror is only an attack if you fear your own reflection. Trump's hand shot out, grabbing the edge of the table so forcefully that the wood creaked under his grip. His knuckles went white. He leaned forward, his voice suddenly louder than it had been all morning, ragged with effort. Do not lecture me. Do not pretend you are any better. He drew a ragged breath, his face mottled with color. You stand there behind your little stack of papers and your rehearsed lines, thinking you have the right to judge me. He lifted his hand and jabbed a finger toward her across the space between their tables. Who are you to stand in front of this country and say I am unfit? His voice cracked, but he did not stop. Who are you to act like you are the only honest person in this chamber? You do not know what it takes to carry this office. He was shouting now, the words colliding as if he could bury her composure under the volume. You have no idea what this job does to a person. You do not get to stand there and call yourself better. The final syllable echoed against the high ceiling, then faded. Ocasio-Cortez did not blink. Her face did not shift, not even a flicker. When she answered, her tone was so even it made the contrast feel obscene. I am not here to be better than you. I am here to be honest. He scoffed, the sound hoarse. Honest. His hand fell back to the table with a dull thud. You think any of this is honesty? He gestured to the folders, the cameras, the committee. This is theater. It always has been. Ocasio-Cortez tilted her head slightly, studying him as if she were examining a specimen under glass. Her reply came without a trace of heat. The difference between you and me is simple. I do not need power to be a person. His lips parted as if to retort, but no words came. A tremor passed through the muscle at his jaw. His hand closed again around the edge of the table, and he looked down, as though the sight of her face had become too much to bear. A few seats away, a Republican committee member shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the door. No one else moved. No one spoke. Ocasio-Cortez let the moment stretch until even the cameramen seemed to be holding their breath. Then she drew in a slow, quiet breath. Her voice was softer than it had been at any point that morning, and yet it carried all the more because of it. You call this theater because you have built your life on performance. Her gaze did not waver. You have spent years convincing yourself that the applause was proof you could never fail. That volume could replace integrity. Her next words fell into the hush like a stone breaking the surface of still water. It is not judgment. It is not scorn. It is a mirror, and you are the one who brought it here. Trump lifted his head, meeting her stare with an exhaustion that looked almost like resignation. His lips pressed together, but no sound came out. The red line of frustration across his cheekbones faded into something duller, something hollow. Ocasio-Cortez did not look away. Her tone did not soften, and you are looking into it whether you want to or not. He swallowed, the movement hard and visible. One of the reporters in the back of the chamber felt her chest tighten. Even from 20 feet away, she could see it. The moment a man realized there was no more script, no more distraction to hide behind. Ocasio-Cortez closed her hand around the edge of the folder. Her last words were so low they barely carried past the microphones, but every person in the room heard them. And you are looking at yourself. The moment did not begin with a shout. It began with a motion so sudden that no one quite saw it coming. Trump reached sideways, his hand closing around the folder stacked nearest the edge of the table. His advisor tried to intercept, but his grip tightened. With a jerk, he yanked the papers free, the force tearing the top sheet loose. The advisor recoiled as Trump lifted the folder in both hands. He did not wave it for emphasis. He swung it in a single motion, sending a cascade of documents into the air. Sheets of official letterhead and stamped exhibits drifted across the hearing room like pale confetti. For an instant, no one breathed. The cameras tracked each floating page as if they were watching a slow, silent collapse. Trump did not look at them. He did not look at anyone. His shoulders heaved, his face blotched with color that was neither anger nor shame, but something harder to name. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse, barely more than a thread. I just wanted them to remember me. His eyes were fixed on the papers settling on the carpet around him. A single sheet landed against the toe of his polished shoe. Like a thing that did not care what it revealed, he drew a slow breath that sounded like it hurt to take. I wanted them to remember me as strong. The words fell into the quiet, and no one moved to pick them up. No one dared. He lifted his head then, and for the first time all morning there was no attempt at defiance in his gaze. His eyes shone with something raw, something unfinished. But I am not weak. His voice broke across the last word, and the microphone slipped from his fingers. It fell in a straight line to the floor, struck the tile, and bounced once with a sharp metallic crack that ricocheted through the chamber. The impact did not sound like any other noise that day. It sounded final. In the next 5 seconds, nothing happened. No one stirred to collect the fallen papers. No one leaned over to whisper a note. Every person in the hearing room was pinned by the same silent recognition. They were witnessing the moment a myth came undone. No one knew what to do with that truth. Ayok did not look away. Her hands rested calmly on the table. Her voice was softer than it had been in any earlier exchange, but it carried all the same. You did not lose respect today. Her eyes did not waver. You let it die of thirst, one night at a time, while you told yourself you could never be defeated. The words settled over him like a shroud. He did not reach for the microphone. He did not speak. At the edge of the committee dais, a young Republican representative shifted. He took a half step forward, as if summoned by reflex. His hand lifted, hovering over Trump's shoulder, but it never made contact. His fingers curled in and he stepped back, unable to cross the last inch of space. Trump's breathing came in shallow bursts. He did not lift his gaze. He did not look for help. He stood there alone, surrounded by the evidence he had tried to deny. The papers still moved in the current from the overhead vents, sliding across the floor like they were searching for a place to rest. And in that fragile quiet, the last of the audience understood that no volume, no spectacle could put them back into his hand. His chest rose and fell once, twice. Then he bowed his head, the motion slow, as though it cost him everything he had left. The clip spread faster than any prepared statement ever could. By the time the hearing adjourned, it was already circling every corner of the internet. On Twitter, snippets of the final exchange racked up millions of views in under an hour. The microphone falling, the papers drifting across the floor, Trump's voice cracking as he whispered he was not weak. On cable news, anchors struggled to keep their voices level as they replayed the same 30 seconds again and again. Fox News filled the bottom of the screen with a banner in capital letters. An unprecedented political assault. In the next hour, the phrasing shifted. A bolder chyron appeared. AOC declares war on the presidency. At the headquarters of Newsmax, a producer tapped her pen against the control board, her eyes never leaving the footage of Trump with his head bowed. She turned to her editor and whispered that no matter what they said, nothing would erase that image. In living rooms across the country, people watched in silence. Some leaned forward on their couches. Some turned away, unable to look directly at the unraveling of a story they had believed would last forever. A congressional hallway echoed with hurried footsteps as reporters scrambled to corner lawmakers on their way out. Questions collided in the air. Do you still support the president? Is this the beginning of a resignation push? Have you read the Walter Reed documents? Most walked past without stopping, but one did not. A senior Republican representative, a man whose face had been on television for decades, paused just beyond the hearing room doors. He stood still for a moment, as if collecting the words he had never expected to say out loud. The cameras pressed closer. He looked into the lenses without blinking. It may be time for all of us to ask a question we should have asked sooner. He drew a quiet breath. Who is truly running this White House? No one interrupted him. No one tried to soften the sentence. He turned and walked down the corridor, his footsteps slow, echoing against the marble. In the control rooms, producers scrambled to mark the timestamp. They knew they would need it for every highlight reel that would follow. Outside, the sky had darkened into a cold dusk. In the parking lots, satellite trucks beamed live feeds to millions of screens. Some viewers would call it vindication. Some would call it betrayal, but no one could call it uncertain. In the final minutes before the feeds cut to commercial, the House Oversight Committee issued a statement. White text scrolled across a black background as the networks read it aloud. The House Oversight Committee confirms that it will open a formal investigation into allegations of federal budget misuse and the concealment of medical incapacity. No disclaimers, no spin. Just the plain words that signaled a line had been crossed. On the digital feeds, hashtags multiplied. The mirror they couldn't shatter, #testify, not weak but exposed. A brief, unpolished video went viral, a phone recording of a screen showing Trump's hand releasing the microphone. The caption was only 3 words. The moment broke. In studios from New York to Los Angeles, commentators debated whether this would end in censure or something far more final. But inside the chamber, the quiet remained. It was the kind of hush that did not fade when the cameras turned off. Ocasio-Cortez did not look triumphant as she collected the folders. She looked tired. She looked resolute. The last thing the cameras caught before the feed cut away was her sliding the Walter Reed record back into its envelope and pressing it flat against the table. The screen faded to black. A single line of text appeared. Mandatory testimony may begin as early as next week. And below that, one final sentence that did not offer closure, only certainty. Do not turn away. The truth is not finished here.